Hello, 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 Jordan Sheridan live. Status Coup. It is Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. Hope everybody's having a lovely, lovely day. I am not going to lie. Uh, I am a bit swamped, to say the least. Things have been extremely, extremely busy, handling a whole lot of behind the scenes things that I will not bore you with. uh, while also trying to keep content going and doing investigative stories. So there's a whole lot going on. So trying my best just to keep up. Um, I will wait till we get more people trickling in. Smash that like button right under the video. Thumbs up. Share this live stream if you can, so we can get more people watching. We got two really, really good guests today on important stories that I do not think the corporate media or even many independent outlets are covering. So quite a lot to talk about as far as a story we broke or I broke this morning on Amazon, a worker who is part of the union drive literally being arrested while organizing. And also, Hawaii's water is now poisoned by the U.S. Navy. So we're going to go talk about that, which shockingly, I haven't really seen much in the media on Hawaii's water being poisoned by the Navy. So we have a great guest to talk about that. So smash the like button, share this live stream so we can get it out to more people. Our numbers have been significantly down, like more down than usual. It seems that YouTube, despite us now having 123,000 subscribers, somehow YouTube isn't showing our content even more or showing our content even less. I don't know how that works, but I digress. So we need you to like, we need you to share, and if you can, create a separate social media post that we're live, which makes a big difference. Let me read some questions, comments, concerns before I get going. Thank you for covering the water crisis in Honolulu, Sulfic says. Absolutely. It's very important. Jordan's wearing his account shirt. Bet Pro Wolf's on, Professor Wolf's on. My account shirt? Huh. You mean an accountant shirt? I'm certainly not an accountant. Nominee, congratulations on how fast you're growing gray and bald. Why wait until you're 40? Excuse me. I'm definitely growing gray. Don't think I'm quite bald yet, but appreciate the kind comments about my hair and the color of it. I definitely am getting gray. It's disconcerting, but what are you going to do? Did you say Hawaiian water is being positioned? No, poisoned. Hawaii's water around Pearl Harbor is poisoned. And it's very fitting because today is the anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attacks. So kind of fitting that the story we're talking about is Hawaii's water being poisoned by none other than the United States Navy. Isn't that interesting? So again, share this live stream, smash the like button, all that good stuff. I've been covering Amazon's Union Drive in Staten Island for many months. I've been out to the Staten Island warehouse many times. I was just out there last week going live with an update on the Union Drive. I think it's one of the most important stories as far as workers fighting back, because let me tell you something. If you got workers to successfully unionize at one Amazon warehouse in America, the ripple effects from that, I mean, would be absolutely insane. The ripple effects. So I've been continuing to cover it. Oh, by the way, super chats are welcome. Thank you. Keep those coming too, if you can. So Amazon, as I've reported, and we've reported at Status Coup, has been increasing their union busting to really insane levels. They started holding daily mandatory union busting sessions at the massive Staten Island warehouse in November. We obtained audio from one of these sessions that showed HR officials, many of whom were flown in from out of state to the Staten Island warehouse, pushing rampant propaganda onto the workers about Amazon. The workers who are trying to form a union, they're a third party and they're going to get in the way of Amazon and the workers. Wonderful direct relationship, yada, yada, yada. So that's on our Substack. We had audio of one of the union busting sessions and we broke that. So recently, we learned that an Amazon worker who's been an active part. Thank you for the super chat. I'll read the super chats at the end. So keep those super chats coming if you can. We recently learned that an Amazon worker who's been an active part of the union drive campaign was arrested by NYPD officers while unionizing, while doing protected union organizing. Colin, if you could show the Substack piece. By the way, if you're not a Status Coup Substack member yet, what are you waiting for? Sign up for our Substack. You could sign up for our You could sign up to our Substack for free. You could also sign up as a paid member. A lot of the stories we do will be for all members for free, whereas some will be just for paid subscribers. I just put the link in the super chat to our Substack so you could read along to the piece. I was up till 11 o'clock at night last night, by the way, finishing this. So Amazon worker and union organizer arrested by the NYPD after mysterious protesters complaint. The NYPD arrested Brett Daniels on November 15th. The NYPD denied arresting Brett Daniels on November 15th, but video shows otherwise. Quote, "They handcuffed me, used extreme physical force, and put me in a holding cell for several hours." So let's be clear. And smash that like button. Got 100 people watching, only 60 likes. I need every single person to press that like button. And yes, after this Amazon story, we're going to get to Hawaii's water source around Pearl Harbor area being poisoned by the U.S. Navy, probably for decades, since World War II. But now it's all coming to the surface, and people on the Navy base, Red Hill, are being suggested to leave, and the Hawaii Health Department has ordered the U.S. Navy. So the Hawaii Health Department has ordered the U.S. Navy to shut down its water system because it's so contaminated with diesel and jet fuel. Let me repeat, diesel and jet fuel that has been stored underground right near the water source for decades. Chickens are coming home to roost, and the water is poisoned in Hawaii, and Lord knows how many people are affected, how many people have been drinking diesel and jet fuel soaked or laced water for God knows how long. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. So before I'm going to bring on the Amazon worker who was arrested while organizing. Again, a worker who was doing protected legal organizing was arrested for the crime of organizing. He was arrested. It just so happens to be in November, Amazon workers who are part of Amazon Labor Union, that's the group of workers trying to form a union at Amazon, they dropped off their signatures to hold an election with the National Labor Relations Board. Right after they dropped off their signatures with the NLRB, all of a sudden, Amazon starts holding mandatory daily union busting sessions where all workers have to sit through these union busting sessions that range from a half hour to 45 minutes. Around that time, Brett Daniels and Christian Smalls were under the blue tent at Amazon just doing organizing. So I'm going to read a little bit of this piece, and then we're going to have Brett on to talk about what happened. On the same week that, and again, this is from our Substack. So if you're not on our Substack, sign up. Sign up. It's right there. Click on that link. You could sign up as a free member if you want to our Substack. You could also sign up as a paid member, which obviously helps. We're trying to earn revenue in a variety of different ways outside of YouTube, but you could also sign up as a free member if you don't have the funds to become a paid member. On the same week that Amazon began holding mandatory daily union busting sessions at its massive warehouse in Staten Island, a worker and union drive organizer was arrested while performing protected union activity outside the warehouse. On November 15th, Brett Daniels, a Staten Island worker and member of the Amazon Labor Union, AOU, the group of Amazon workers who have been organizing to form a union at the Staten Island warehouse since April, was sitting with Christian Smalls, the ex-Amazon worker fired in 2020 for organizing workers to demand safer conditions at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. They were sitting inside a blue tent. Inside the tent, which has served as AOU's unofficial union drive headquarters for months, was a small contained fire for the union organizers to keep warm. Daniels told Status Coup he and Smalls were doing their typical union organizing, handing out free food and books, quote, for the people and for the workers. As they were conducting normal union campaign activity, NYPD officer Nicholas Rosado approached them with several other officers. Quote, the officers, showed us the text message that said 4 to 5 protesters outside Amazon and said Chris Smalls was there, Daniels said, adding that he was unsure who contacted the police, making false claims that their union organizing was instead an unsanctioned protest. Quote, the police lieutenant showed me his phone and the text said Chris Smalls protesting 4 to 5 people. Smalls recounted to Status Coup, emphasizing that there were just 2 people, not 4, and both he and Daniels told officers they were not protesting but engaging in protected union activity. But according to Smalls and Daniels, the officers disregarded this, telling them they could have their blue tent up, could not have their blue tent up or have an open flame on public property. The order was odd considering NYPD officers had passed the blue union tent many times since the union drive launched in April, yet never demanded organizers take it down. Quote, we explained that we are within our rights to organize here on public property and that we meet exemptions to the code regarding the fire and tent per New York City laws, Daniels told Status Coup. But with the officers still demanding the fire be put out and that the tent come down, Smalls and Daniels said they followed the officers' instructions. As they were letting the fire die down, they didn't have water to put it out, and bringing the tent down, officers began asking for their IDs. Quote, we're already complying, a frustrated Daniels responded to the officers, refusing to provide his ID. He was ultimately handcuffed and brought to NYPD's 121st precinct in Staten Island. So I'm going to stop reading the article and I'm going to air the interview. I spoke with Brett Daniels, the organizer, the union organizer, an Amazon worker who was arrested. This was on November 15th, so a few weeks ago. So I'm going to play the interview with him. It's, I think, about 20 to 25 minutes long, but it's well worth it. This is a really, really important story. I can't prove that Amazon called the cops on these union organizers. What I can prove, these union organizers were literally doing the same thing they've been doing for months. Since April, this union campaign has been going on outside Staten Island's warehouse. Literally, there's never been an issue with having the blue tent, which is where the workers stand, where they pass out food, books, other things, where workers have spoken with where Amazon workers, part of the union drive, where they have spoken with other workers trying to tell them about the union, try to get them to sign cards, pro-union cards, because they need to gather at least 30% of the workforce, get 30% of the workforce to sign the cards to get the NLRB to grant them a union election, to hold a union vote. So it just so happens that there's never been an issue with the blue tent or anything like that until the Amazon workers dropped off the signatures at the National Labor Relations Board. On the same week that in response to that, Amazon started holding mandatory daily union busting sessions. And on the same week, NYPD shows up and arrests a worker who was doing protected organizing union drive activity, handcuffed him, and put him in a holding cell for several hours. So here's the interview. Remember to smash that like button, share this live stream. Let's get this out to as many people as possible. Obviously, YouTube is suppressing this channel. Every time we do anything on Amazon, the numbers are even worse. So if you can, share, and post on your social media, a separate post that we're live. Here we go. Here is Brett Daniels, the Amazon worker who was arrested. Jordan, delighted to be joined by Brett Daniels. You are a worker at Amazon in Staten Island, the mega warehouse that workers have been organizing to form a union since April. That campaign is ongoing, which we can get to in a little bit. You basically started as a seasonal worker at Amazon. Then they got rid of you, like they get rid of a lot of seasonal workers. Then they hired you back. So you've kind of been hired, fired, hired again a couple times since you started last year. And early on, you joined the workers who are trying to form a union. That's correct?
Yep.
So tell me about before we get to what happened with you, because you were arrested on November 15th for organizing and doing activity that should be protected. Can you kind of talk to me? Why is it? What made you drawn to join Christian Smalls and other workers there during the beginning stages of the union drive in April?
Yeah, time and time again, the ruling class exploits the working class. So we've had enough, and it's time for change.
And I assume working at Amazon, you've experienced some of the what Amazon calls the wonderful direct relationship with employees. From what I've been told, intimidations, threats, insane pushes by managers and supervisors to keep getting your quota and your productivity up to levels that are not even possible. Can you kind of talk about what's been your personal experience working there?
Yeah, whether it was the warehouse that I was in Arizona or here in Staten Island, it's the same exploitation, same not caring for anyone. Really, it's profit over people, and it's time we focus on the people, put them first.
And can you kind of bringing us to what happened in mid-November? So you and Christian, who was an Amazon worker, was fired in the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic for trying to organize workers to demand safer conditions. He's been in the media, and obviously people know who Christian is. So you and Christian were under the blue tent, which I've been there covering what's going on, your union drive. The blue tent is kind of like the central headquarters, I guess you could say, for workers who are part of the Amazon labor union to try and unionize. So you guys were under the blue tent. You had a fire going to try and keep warm. What were you doing at that time in the day?
Yeah, so like we're out there each day talking to workers, telling them that we can, fight for better together, make our voices heard. And so, like typical, we're out there with free food, free books, trying to, educate the people, bring community together, and let their voices be heard. The pigs, the NYPD showed up and, immediately, said that we couldn't have the tent up and we couldn't have the fire. And they've been there time and time again and never, voice concern for the tent at all. And only once prior with the fire and after us explaining how, that we are within our right to be there doing that. That we weren't actually protesting at that time, that we were just organizing for the people.
Just so people understand, so the blue tent is outside of the Amazon warehouse, Amazon's warehouse in Staten Island, where you and other workers are trying to organize. It's huge. It's the size of 15 football fields. Where the tent is right near a bus stop where workers are dropped off, jump on the bus, get off the bus to and from work. So the tent is strategically there to try and talk to workers getting on the bus, getting off the bus, to tell them about what you're trying to do, which is form a union, get them to sign cards to express their interest. You need to bring to the National Labor Relations Board at least 30% of the workforce. So you need to bring cards representing 30% of the workforce signing yes for a union. So that tent is on a public sidewalk. So you are within your right, from everything I've researched, to have the tent there. And under the tent, you guys have been handing out, free food, books, and workers come, to and from the tent to kind of see what's going on, talk to the Amazon labor union workers. And basically that's where communications about the union effort go on, right?
Yep. Yeah. And people really, really appreciate, it being there, even, on the days that I have to go in and work those 12-hour shifts. Not only myself, but my comrades there who have also joined for the union, all realize like how much of a difference it makes. A lot of us have long commutes. Like people have up to 3+ hours commute, and are in not only all 5 boroughs, but even past that. Amazon needs the bodies to exploit to make their profit.
Right. So can we talk about, on November 15th, you and Chris were there, you're handing out books, this and that. That period, November 15th, the audience should know, it just so happened to be basically the same exact week Amazon started holding mandatory daily union busting sessions, which Status Coup obtained audio from one of them. So that same week, they were calling in you workers to mandatory sessions, described as, training sessions, but really the purpose of those sessions were to tell you not to join the union and to try and scare workers away from the union, correct?
Yep, they were quote unquote mandatory peak training. And like they say that this is what we need in order to be prepared for peak training, is specifically anti-ALU. It's all anti-ALU, and I actually had quite trouble getting into one of those meetings, and it wasn't until they stopped for like just a little over a week at JFK 8, but they continued in all of the other buildings. They brought them back this past week, and actually on Thursday I got my way in, even though they didn't initially like send me any message about it. I had to ask about it and let them know, hey, I haven't taken this, and I need to have the training that's mandatory for this peak.
Mm-hmm. So I bring that up, that it's that week that the mandatory daily sessions are starting. It just so happened they started these mandatory daily sessions when the workers trying to form the union dropped off your signatures at the National Labor Relations Board. So tell me, that week they start the mandatory daily sessions, and then the police approach you, the NYPD police officers. By my count, it looked like 4 or 5 in the video. They approach you. Let's show some of what happened.
We are complying. We are complying with y'all, so you're not issuing us a summons. You're not issuing us a summons because we are complying with y'all. We've been out here.
I'm asking you nice and polite.
Before you put me in handcuffs?
Yes, as of right now, you're being stopped. Can I see your ID, sir?
No, Chris. They're trying to put me in handcuffs.
I need your ID.
They're trying to issue us a summons even though we are complying.
Trying to avoid that.
We are trying to avoid that.
So show it. All you have to do is take it out. If you give us your ID. Because I asked him for his ID. Boss, let me get your ID.
No, we are complying with y'all.
Okay, once again,
we're already complying.
You failed to give me your ID twice. He just said he failed twice. Sir, give me your ID.
He's not responsible for anything. Right. He's not responsible. You already knew you came over here and addressed me. You don't need to address him.
Sir,
you don't need to address him.
Give me your ID.
No.
Are you failing to give me your ID for the third time?
You don't need to address him.
No.
Put him in cuffs.
Hey yo, what are you doing?
Look, they're arresting me for complying. What's this? What's the issue for arresting me? Why are you arresting me?
See how you're resisting
Why are you arresting
See how
me?
you're resisting now.
Because we're complying? Y'all are getting massive charges for this. Y'all are getting massive charges.
See how you're actually tightening
Look, they're hurting my wrist. They're hurting my wrist.
We see in the video that they're approaching you, they're asking for your ID, and then they arrest you. what happened before that video? What did they say to you when they approached?
Yeah, so they were focused on the tent and the open flame. They said we couldn't have either on public property. They said you could take it on Amazon property, and Chris, told them, well, we can't be there either. Y'all know that. But yeah, so eventually, they were very adamant about it. So we started to take the tent down, and then, Chris was just saying, oh, like, we'll just let the flame out, like let it go out on its own, because it was, the last log on its way to go. So that's where we were at, and we were packing up and everything. And so we were complying with what they asked, even though we were well within our right to be there. So, Chris was like, if you're going to give us a summons, give us a summons. But Chris said that he'll put the fire out. I brought up the point that they failed to give us a summons before for the tent or the fire. So they're actually breaking the law by not doing anything before, and then all of a sudden now it's a problem.
But again, you've had the blue tent out there for 8 months, and there's been NYPD officers out there for different reasons for 8 months. So it seems kind of odd that the same week that Amazon begins holding daily mandatory union busting sessions, all of a sudden a flood of NYPD officers start rolling in, basically telling you can't have a tent there. Did you see any kind of cause and effect with that?
I mean, I think that speaks for itself. But yeah, there's definitely a huge correlation there. Yeah.
So basically, again, no problem with the tent for 8 months. Problem with the tent. Same week, Amazon ratchets up and dials up the pressure on the union busting. Okay, so you told them you're within your right to have the flame, to have the tent, but regardless, you were cooperating, and then they start asking for your ID. What happens next?
Yeah, so first, they asked for Chris's ID, and he's like, you identified me by full name. Like that was one of the first things that they said. Like, and Officer Rosado said that he had been to one of our protests before. So, he didn't need to show his ID, and then when they were asking me, I was like, what for? And, it was right around that time is when I started recording. We definitely did not feel safe. I mean, you never feel safe around the pigs, but especially in this situation, I was like, okay, it's time to start recording. And yeah, I'm very glad I did, because, I mean, you can see I didn't even, I asked and they didn't even say why they were asking for the ID, why they were going to arrest me, and then, to literally say that they were going to put me in handcuffs, and then for me to ask that and then never say, and then use extreme physical force. That's, quite ridiculous. I mean, you could see, like, I mean, my wrist hurt that entire day, and it could have been way worse. Black, brown, and indigenous violence. That's what, I mean, fighting for liberation for all is what this is all about. Like the every single Amazon building, it's like they exploit the land, the Black, brown, and indigenous land that they're on, and then the people. They make the majority, but yet aren't the managers. The managers look more like me. Mm-hmm. So it's quite ridiculous, because it's racist and sexist and classist, and it's got to change.
Right. So let me ask you, because both you and Christian had told me for the story I broke about this, that police officers showed you a text message basically from who we can't confirm, but a text message that there was basically a complaint made to the police, and that's why they came over to you. What did the text message say, and who do you suspect made the complaint against you guys?
Yeah, so it said that there were 4 to 5 protesters, and it said that Chris Smalls was there. And so that's initially the first thing that they asked. They said, "Are y'all protesting?" Said we got a call for that, and showed us that. And so we're like, we're not protesting anything. Was like, you're in a union, right? That's what we're fighting for.
Mm-hmm. So,
Chris, and then for who we suspect, it's gotta be 1 or 2 extreme possibilities. So it's either Amazon, and it's been Amazon for a few calls now, and they've done many different ways of union busting all the time. Whether it's here, whether it's Alabama, it doesn't matter. And even, I just found out in Arizona, there's another case, actually in Chandler, like right where at another warehouse where I came from. But it's either Amazon or it's Amazon's landlord, Matrix, which is benefiting off of Amazon being one of their biggest, profit,
biggest,
so they're working together.
Yeah. So Amazon leases the land from Matrix. So Christian Smalls told me for the article that I did on our Substack about this, that he got into an argument with the supervisor for Matrix, who was the landlord, a couple days before this, because Christian Smalls allegedly caught the supervisor for the landowner stealing your signs near the bus stop, stealing your union signs. So it kind of seems to be that Christian Smalls got in an argument with the landowner, and then a couple days later, the cops are called on you guys for doing the same thing you've been doing for 8 months. By the way, I reached out to the Matrix Global to ask if they did call the cops. Haven't heard back. Shocking. And I should also say this is pretty glaring. The NYPD, a spokesperson, told me via email that neither of you were arrested and you were just issued 2 summonses. So I'll just read what you told me. You said that, hold on. It sounds like a funny coincidence that they took me away from organizing, handcuffed me, used extreme physical force, put me in a holding cell for several hours, yet the NYPD said they didn't arrest me. So, I mean, unless you're a compulsive liar, which I don't think, and the video shows them handcuffing you, the NYPD is straight up lying that they didn't arrest you when it's on video that they handcuffed you. Can you kind of describe from the actual arrest, the handcuffing, to taking you down to the 121st precinct in Staten Island? Break that down. What happened?
Yeah. So, after you could clearly, hear me say that they were hurting my wrists, you could see at the end of the video that it kind of gets disrupted after, I saw another coworker who I actually signed up for the union to, have an election for the union, said, "You're my witness, right?" I got thrown up against the bus stop by 4 NYPD pigs. They, quote unquote, didn't arrest me, but had me in cuffs, threw me, in the back of their car, took me down to the, 121 precinct, did not read me my Miranda rights. And because I've been in a situation before with the pigs and they didn't read me my Miranda rights, I knew better not to say anything. So when Officer Rosado decided to be, quote unquote, interrogating me, because that's what they told my comrade Jordan Flowers, who knows all about Amazon and other kind of corruption going on, that they said when Jordan picked me up, said, hold on, we're interrogating him right now. And I said no comment because I knew better.
So to be clear, my understanding is when police officers put handcuffs on you, take you down to the precinct, put you in a cell, a holding cell for several hours, you could call it what you want, detain, but that's typically an arrest. I mean, you're not in prison. You have not been convicted, but you were detained, arrested. They told me that nobody was arrested and they just issued you with 2 summonses. So obviously they're not telling the truth. They're lying. They also wouldn't answer who called them and made the complaint. I don't know if it was Amazon. I don't know if it was the landowner. Frankly, from what I gather, Amazon and the landowner, Matrix Global, are basically one and the same. They work together in terms of surveilling workers who are trying to unionize, in terms of trying to obstruct the union campaign. So whether Amazon called or the Matrix Global, the landowner that Amazon leases from, called, sounds like the same thing to me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So to be clear, you on Friday went to court and at least one of the summonses was dismissed. Is that correct?
Yeah, Chris and I both went, and one after the other. I went first, and I asked if I said this may not be information available to me, but my comrade Chris Smalls was under the same summons for this. So, but then as soon as they said, oh, he'll have to come in. So he did. Boom. They said the same thing. The case was dismissed. So the case was dismissed, but I wanted to clarify that the second part, that the second summons that I got for the tent, which is quite ridiculous because it's not even my tent, and it was just Chris and I organizing it for the people. But yeah, so the second summons was for January 10th next year. And so I wanted to clarify on that. They said, okay, you got to go to this court. They, aren't having in-people meetings right now because of COVID. So they referred me to the website. When I entered the summons number, it says no case found, 0 balance due.
So basically, just to really make viewers understand this is kind of crunch time for the union campaign. You guys filed with the National Labor Relations Board. You brought over 2,000 signatures recently from workers expressing interest in forming the union. The National Labor Relations Board told you didn't have enough, which in my view seems to be a little twisted, because the reason technically you didn't have enough was because Amazon has 150% turnover rate and they're firing an insane amount of workers. So you could sign up workers, but if Amazon's just firing many of those workers, you're not going to technically have enough current workers, even though those workers, the workers that signed up, a lot of them are fired. So Amazon seems to be, just through how many people they routinely fire, gaming the system with the National Labor Relations Board. So anyway, Christian Smalls said that you guys will be refiling in the next few weeks. But bottom line, it seems to me Amazon started holding mandatory daily union busting sessions after you guys brought down those votes, brought down those union cards to the National Labor Relations Board. And on the same exact week, NYPD cops that have literally been outside your union tent several times for months without a problem come up to you because they've had a complaint, cuff you, throw you in a cell. Doesn't even seem like, according to my view, the summonses that they gave you for the open flame and the moving vehicle or the moving something, which was the
structure.
moving structure, it seems like there are exemptions to that. So it's not even clear if those summonses should have been filed in the first place. But it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, caught timing here. Amazon is dialing up the pressure on this union busting, and then NYPD cops arrested you.
Yep, exactly.
So what should people know? Because honestly, people are trying to keep up. There's strikes happening around the country. The Starbucks union drive is going on. Votes are going to be counted Thursday, so this week. So Amazon, maybe this Staten Island union drive has fallen a little under the radar, but what is at stake? What should people know about Amazon's tactics, about what your arrest signifies? Anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, so Amazon will do anything and everything to stop a union, workers having a better life, them losing profit. I want every worker to know that you have the right to organize and form a union. That we need them. We need them to work for the people. It needs to be worker led and worker centered. And that's what this has been all about since day one with the ALU. So any Amazon employee, if you're trying to organize in your building, you want to get in contact with us, reach out to the Amazon Labor Union. We're on like all the typical social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Amazon Labor Union or at Amazon Labor. But we can do this together. We can fight for better. We deserve better.
Thank you, Brett. I'm glad that everything's all right now. Sorry you had to go through that. I think it's pretty scandalous that a union organizer was arrested seemingly for no reason. And then the NYPD lied about it. And Amazon's, at least the landowner, will not answer if they call the cops. In fairness, I didn't ask Amazon if they called the cops. I'm sure they wouldn't have told me anyway. Somebody called the police on union organizers who were doing what is legal and protected. And it seems like nothing's gonna come of it. So at least we could have you on to share your story, and we'll keep in touch.
Yes, appreciate you. Thank you, Jordan.
So that was Brett Daniels, an Amazon worker at Staten Island who was arrested on November 15th while conducting normal legal union activity. He and Christian Smalls were handing out food and free food and free books to workers when NYPD officers approached him. And Christian told them to put out their fire, told them to take the tent down. As they were complying with those two requests from the officers, they were asked for their IDs. Brett said, no, I am complying. We are complying. And then he was handcuffed, thrown into jail, thrown into a holding cell for several hours. And then the NYPD lied to me and said neither of these people were arrested. Well, I don't know what you call handcuffing a union organizer, throwing him in the car, taking him to a holding cell for several hours. I would call that arrested. So, the NYPD is not always known for its accuracy or honesty. So I'm not really surprised they're lying about it. But it is pretty scandalous that in the middle of a really historic union drive, which these workers have had success. They recently dropped off over 2,000 signatures from Amazon workers at the Staten Island warehouse who signed yes to their interest to hold a union election. That not only is Amazon holding these mandatory daily union busting sessions, which we broke that story a couple weeks ago. That's on our Substack where we published the audio of one of those union busting sessions. But now cops are mysteriously showing up with, according to both Brett and Christian, a police officer showed them a text message they received with a complaint. I can't prove that Amazon called the police. I can't prove that the landowner, Matrix Global, called the police. According to Christian Smalls, he and a supervisor with Matrix Global, who is the landowner that Amazon leases the warehouse from, they got into a tense argument a couple days before this arrest because Christian caught the supervisor with the landowner stealing or throwing out union signs. So it just so happens after getting in that argument, all of a sudden 4 or 5 police officers show up and arrest a union organizer. So not holding my breath that anything will be done by this. I do know that Brett, who I just spoke with yesterday, filled out an affidavit with the National Labor Relations Board on the incident. It remains to be seen if the National Labor Relations Board is going to do anything about it or look into who called the police on these union organizers. But this is a big deal. Technically, according to the law in America, you are supposed to be able, and it's legal, to perform union activity, to stand out there, to speak with workers and try to pitch them on joining a union and signing a pro-union card that these workers need 30% of the workforce to sign yes on the card to holding a union for them to drop it off at the National Labor Relations Board. So if that is no longer going to be protected and the cops are going to be called, saying that union organizers are protesting illegally, that's a problem. And somebody just said the NLRB is a paper tiger. Yeah, I don't disagree. Biden supposedly put in more pro-union people into the NLRB, but the proof is in the pudding because Amazon successfully and illegally stopped the union election in Bessemer, Alabama. The regional NLRB recently ruled that election had to be redone. So technically, that's a good thing that at least the regional NLRB ruled that Amazon did illegal things, and the union election in Alabama needs to be redone. But why is nothing done to Amazon for doing illegal things constantly? Why is nothing being done about police? Who called? The police wouldn't answer me. Who made the complaint to you? Whether it was Amazon who called the police on these union organizers, or it was the landowner that Amazon leases from. Everything I know, Amazon and the landowner are basically peas in a pod and one and the same. So it really doesn't matter whether it's Amazon who called or the landowner called. The landowner, by the way, I reached out for comment. They wouldn't respond. So the NYPD lies that these people weren't arrested. They were arrested. If you look in the actual Substack piece, which again, join our Substack. You could sign up as a free Substack member if you want. There's also paid options. I just put the link there in the super chat. Sign up. But you could read the story, and in the story is the video of the arrest. He was handcuffed at the end of it. So what are they talking about? He wasn't arrested. So we're going to stay on this. I know there's a whole lot of other strikes going on in America. By the way, the Kellogg's workers just rejected the new contract that was offered to them. So Kellogg's workers remain on strike. Starbucks workers, the ballots for that union drive are going to be counted tomorrow. So technically tomorrow, not technically, the ballots begin to be counted tomorrow. I don't know if they'll have a result to whether they won a union in Buffalo tomorrow, but the ballots will begin to be counted. Actually, today, the NLRB rejected for a second time Starbucks's efforts to stop that union election from stop the ballots from being counted in Buffalo. So the Buffalo workers in Starbucks, which we recently were on the ground in Buffalo, speaking with those workers and covering their union drive, at the NLRB, at least for them, have rejected the company's attempts to stop the union election and stop the ballots from being counted. And once again, today, NLRB rejected for a second time Starbucks's heavy-handed attempts to stop the ballots from being counted. But I'm going to keep covering this Amazon union drive in Staten Island because to me, it's very, very important. To me, not to say the Starbucks union drive isn't important. They're all important. And it's hard to keep up with all of them. I'm only one person. There's a gazillion strikes going on, and we try to cover as much as we humanly can here with one person. To me, if Amazon workers could successfully unionize one warehouse, the ripple effect that could have for workers, period, not just Amazon workers, but workers, period. If you could successfully win a battle against Amazon, which is the corporate Goliath in this country, it's Amazon, it's Walmart, and a couple others. If you could successfully form a union among Amazon workers, that will have that could spread like wildfire. It really could. So definitely check out the story on our Substack. Share it. The tweet is getting around, but we need more people to share our tweet. Colin, if I'll put it in there. Hold on, if I can find it. Let's see how many. Wow, we got 359 retweets on this bad boy. Holy cow! So if you haven't seen the tweet, feel free to retweet. This is the tweet with the Substack story. and share it. Yes, Bernie Sanders did a town hall last night with these union organizers in Buffalo who are trying to form a union in Buffalo. You see, I would say that the union in Buffalo, I mean, they've had to work hard in Buffalo, but that they're like 3 different stores with far less people. This Amazon warehouse in Staten Island, it has over 7,000 workers. So for them, they're trying to unionize 3 stores in specific. They have to get a lot less signatures from workers to successfully form a union, where Christian Smalls and these workers who are organizing in Staten Island to form a union, they're really up against the hamster wheel. Because the problem is they recently dropped off over 2,000 signatures that they got from Amazon workers at the warehouse. That should have been enough for the NLRB to grant them an actual election. Problem is, at this warehouse, Amazon is 150% turnover. So Amazon is hiring and firing workers at an insane rate. So even if the Amazon labor union, the union organizers get enough signatures, once they hand in the signatures, unfortunately, a whole lot of those workers were fired because Amazon, contrary to the rainbows and sunshine PR commercials you see on TV, Amazon, it's just a sausage factory of hiring and firing, hiring and firing, hiring and firing. And that's how the sausage is made at Amazon. They don't keep their workers, particularly seasonal workers. And after Christmas, they're going to fire a whole new round of people. So it's kind of hard to successfully meet the threshold for the NLRB if Amazon is firing so many people. So we'll stay on this very, very important story. Segue. We have another important story. On Hawaii. Is actually the water in Hawaii near Pearl Harbor. Today is the anniversary of Pearl Harbor, by the way. So fitting we're doing this today, has been poisoned by the U.S. Navy. But before we do that story, I want to remind the audience, particularly Status Coup members. Colin, if you have the video ready. Status Coup members, we could only grow as far as our Status Coup members take us. Recently, we switched our membership site. So people who signed up before October of this year, they signed up through our website, StatusCoup.com. We are asking people, and a lot of people have so far switched over, but we're asking people who signed up with our original member site through StatusCoup.com to switch, meaning to cancel their membership at the original site they signed up through and sign up at our brand new site. Sorry for those who have already seen this video, but we're going to be constantly reminding people because we need people to move over from the old site to the new site. Colin, if you could play the video that explains why we need people to do this and how people can do it. It's Jordan and Colin with Status Coup. First, we wanted to thank our Status Coup members, those people who have signed up and are supporting us financially every single month, in some cases annually. You guys and gals are the reason that we've been able to fund really, really critically important on-the-ground reporting all over this country on the stories that the corporate media will not touch.
Corporate media had us believing that we're just lucky to have a job. We're lucky. If you're still at a place that still offers insurance and you're not paying, you're lucky.
You know, they're almost angrier at me than if I had actually taken a pickaxe and murdered 10 people.
We are the heart and soul of Amazon.
You're not talking about like residual scars from 6 years ago. You're talking about stuff you're getting now.
This is in the last 24 hours.
If back to normal means we're back to being underpaid, it means we're back to being worked like dogs, it means that they're back to harassing homeless people, you can keep your normal.
We want to continue all of that kind of reporting and double down doing more. But we need you to help us by switching your membership from our old site to our brand new site. To be clear, if you've signed up as a Status Coup member anytime after October 1st, this does not apply to you. But if you signed up as a Status Coup member before October of this year, what we need you to do is go in to your membership which Colin will explain how to do, cancel, and then re-sign up at our brand new site. So Colin, why is it that we're asking people to switch over from the old membership site to the new one?
It's twofold. One, for us as Status Coup, it's the new website is dedicated for this membership, so it's just a much more reliable as far as getting the payments through and everything to us. And on your guys' end, it's just going to be a much better experience. You have a dedicated website you can now visit for all of your member content, as well as it gives us the ability to do things we've never been able to do before for members, such as getting a member store exclusively for you guys, more direct contact with you guys through the website, and a bunch of other stuff. So it's just an overall improvement, and also just that adds that reliability and sustainability that we really need.
And I should say, for the member store, we do plan on having exclusive merchandise just for members. So stay tuned for that. That will be coming at some point. Okay, people will ask, all right, you want us to switch? How do we do it?
It's super easy. All you do is just go to StatusCoup.com like you normally do and click on your profile icon in the top right corner. Then you click on subscriptions in the bar there, and then just click cancel subscription, or just cancel. If you don't see a cancel button, instead you see suspend or pause, click that instead. It's functionally the same thing. And after you've done that, head over to the new site just by going to statuscoup.com/join. Then once you get to the new site, just follow the instructions to sign up as a new member on there at whatever level you want to. And you're all set. If you guys run into any issues at all, either on the old site or on the new site, just email info@statuscoup.com. and I'll help you as best as I can to resolve any issues you might encounter.
So super important to get everybody to switch from the old site to the brand new site. I know people don't like having to do things more than once. I promise you, after you move over to the brand new site, we will not ask anything more of you. So thank you guys. Again, if you have any questions or troubleshooting needs, info@statuscoup.com. And in the description of this video, there will also be a link for the member switch page, which gives you directions on how to do this if you have any issues. Thanks again for being a member, and thank you for switching over from our old site to our brand new member site. So the if you know, that video and written instructions are right under this live stream. So at the top of the description is the link for our member switch, where if you click on it, it has that video, so you can follow the instructions visually, which are in that video, how to do it, and they're written out for you as well. Super important. Sorry that I'm going to have to consistently remind people, but we got to get folks over from the old site to the new site. And just to dumb it down for people, because we got an email from one viewer who kind of didn't understand. So the member site that we our site that we've had pretty much since the beginning, there's been a lot of issues with it in terms of payments failing to go through. Not your payments have been protected, your information has been protected, just payments not going through on a consistent, reliable basis, in part because there's been an increase in banks detecting fraud, not with Status Coup, but just in general. So that's why we moved over to this brand new membership site, which is a lot more reliable. Our payments have been going through way more consistently and successfully. Obviously, if you want to grow a business and run a business and grow and have enough funding to cover report stories on the field, you need your members' payments to go through to fund that. So that's why we need you to move over. So if you have any questions, if you have any issues when you're trying to do it, you can email us at info@statuscoup.com. So again, right under the live stream, the link is right there for the member switch. So segue. Colin, if you have the CNN article, Hawaii, which I went on my honeymoon with my wonderful wife to earlier this year, our belated honeymoon, because we didn't get to go right after our actual wedding, because we got married in 2020 during the pandemic. We couldn't travel. Hawaii health officials order Navy to clean up contaminated drinking water after families are forced out of their homes. The Hawaii Department of Health has demanded the Navy immediately halt operations at a Navy fuel storage facility after a leak led to contaminated drinking water, forcing 700 people from their homes and sickening families. the Navy's Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility is located 100 feet above the Red Hill aquifer, meaning diesel and jet fuel. We're talking hundreds of millions of gallons of diesel and jet fuel. There's only 100 feet that has separated that from the drinking water on Pearl Harbor and around Pearl Harbor. These diesel and jet fuel that the Navy uses are in fuel tanks, fuel storage tankers that are literally like have been there since World War II and are rusty and rusting and corroding with leaks. This the storage facility supplies drinking water to Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam, and other areas of Hawaii. The fuel storage facility was built during World War II and could store up to 250 million gallons of fuel, according to the Navy. Testing revealed petroleum, hydrocarbons, and vapors in the water. On Sunday, the U.S. Pacific Fleet Deputy Commander confirmed a petroleum leak was the cause. To be clear, the U.S. Navy has known about leaks for decades. At this storage facility. Classified Navy report in 1982 revealed leaks in the fuel lines. The Navy responded to, there's been cries and complaints from local leaders there, water experts, for them to totally shut down this facility because it's so close to the water. But the Navy has said, oh, it's fine. Yeah, we have found from time to time high levels of diesel fuel and oil and lead, but we never found it in the drinking water. Yeah? Well, I'd like to see the testing on that drinking water and how often they were testing, because they said, oh, we monitor the drinking water. We test it once every quarter. And quote, Navy officer a couple years ago said, we would know if there's any petroleum in the water. Well, now there's petroleum in the water and lots of it. And frankly, I don't really think we know how long the water has been contaminated in Pearl Harbor. I don't think we know how many people have been affected and made sick. This is a disaster. And frankly, it should be leading the news, but of course it's not, because who the hell cares? It's just water, folks. Just the number one life necessity, which I've been covering for years extensively. So this is a really important story. Earlier today, I spoke with Lori Lou Freshwater. And Lori Lou Freshwater is a really, really interesting woman. She's a journalist, and she is actually a survivor of the water contamination disaster at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. If you don't know, Camp Lejeune was a Marine Corps base in North Carolina that had the largest water contamination in American history, with jet fuel and other contaminants contaminating the drinking water. The Marine Corps basically tried to cover it up for decades. And after it came to light, guess what? They tried to lowball and not pay the victims. So I thought she was the perfect person to speak with. She was recently on with Abby Martin on Empire Files too. So I kind of copied Abby, but she's a good person to copy. I love Abby Martin and Empire Files. So here is my interview with Lori about what she went through at Camp Lejeune and the horrific water contamination happening in the Pearl Harbor and surrounding areas right now in Hawaii. It's Jordan. I am delighted to be joined by Lori Lou Freshwater, and I'm really excited to have you on because, well, the topic's not so exciting. It's actually an emergency situation in Hawaii that you would think if we lived in a sane country, this would be leading the news, but we don't. So for those that don't know, there's been decades long, probably, water contamination off of a Navy base in near Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. And just now it is coming to the surface. We don't know how long this contamination has been going on, but the Hawaii Department of Health has demanded the Navy immediately halt operations at a Navy fuel storage facility. It's called Red Hill, after a leak led to contaminated drinking water. 700 people have been forced from their homes. Totally unknown at this point. How many people are sick? How many people who have been sickened for years and years and years without this coming to the surface? Again, this is the Navy's Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. And the crazy part is the fuel is just 100 feet above the water aquifer. So basically, the water aquifer and the drinking water for people near Pearl Harbor and its surrounding areas, only 100 feet separates it from these fuel storage tanks. These fuel storage tanks are very, very old. We're talking since World War II. Very, very rusty, leaks and things like that. The fuel storage facility can store up to 250 million gallons of fuel, according to the Navy. The Navy has known about the contamination there dating back to the 1980s, yet basically put their hands up and said, well, we monitor the groundwater and we're not finding any petroleum or fuel in the groundwater. So that's going on in Hawaii right now. I wanted to bring you on because you have a pretty tragic life story that kind of mirrors what's going on right now in Hawaii. So I wanted to start with what happened to you, your family, people you know at Camp Lejeune, which is a North Carolina Marine Corps base, which had probably the largest water contamination in American history. The numbers fluctuate between 900,000 and 1 million people who were affected. Can you kind of talk about what happened at Camp Lejeune in terms of the water contamination and how you and your family were affected?
Right. Well, first, thank you for having me. And of course, thank you for all your work on water contamination specifically and all of the things that independent media is so important for. So Camp Lejeune is likely the largest water contamination case in U.S. history. It was spread out over decades. So all of the people who were in and out of Camp Lejeune were exposed to some level of contaminants. With a military base, the issue is that people are there for a short time and then leave. So it's almost impossible to track how many people got sick, how many people will get sick, all of that stuff, because we're everywhere. It's not like when you can go to a community in Massachusetts or, to Flint, and you can at least, study the population and monitor what's going on with their medical situation. With this, it's so big that it's almost, instead of too big to fail, it's too big to tell. And it's just a very tragic chapter in our history. The contaminants mainly were TCE, PCE, and benzene. And what happened is in the 80s, it became so big that they were unable to kind of hide it and shuffle it. And they began to try and blame it on an offsite dry cleaning service, which was polluting the water on base. It was right across the street. And that was happening, but it wasn't the picture. It was just a little tiny piece of the picture. So in the early 80s, I lived on the base as a child. I was a dependent. And it's when the chemicals reach their peak, all of those chemicals that I mentioned. And so I was drinking the water, more so the system at my school was more contaminated than my home system. So, as we were going to school every day in those North Carolina hot summers, we were just drinking at the water fountains and breathing the steam in the cafeterias. And my friends and I would go home with headaches. We still remember that. We were officers' kids. It happened to the entire base. And so finally, it just it was too much for them to try and hide and kick the ball down the road and cover their ass. Sorry, CYA anymore. So it became public. And that's the story. It wasn't really known until a drill instructor's daughter died of childhood leukemia. and he saw a very small snippet on the news about the water contamination, and then went after the Marine Corps about getting all the information. And his name's Jerry Insminger, and without him, we wouldn't even know how large this is.
So just to be clear, this was, I mean, I know there was a dry cleaning chemicals that contaminated the water, but there was also petroleum and chemicals from diesel fuels and jet fuels, correct?
Yes, the only reason that some of this came to light was because and this is makes me think of Red Hill. The maintenance supervisor on base, his wife called in and reported that her tap water smelled like gasoline. And that became something that they, again, it just kept growing and growing. There are massive tanks also in the ground at Camp Lejeune, and they were leaking just thousands and thousands of gallons of gas, same as Hawaii, and it was going directly into the water. So, and that, again, we don't know how much went into the ground because the military is so secretive, and especially when it comes to fuel, they're able to really hide behind national security, which is the darkest irony, because they're not keeping anyone secure. They're actually poisoning the people that they are claiming to, be protecting. So,
seems like national security from a foreign attack, but people's drinking water and whether they're poisoned or not doesn't seem to apply to security, even though it should.
Imagine if a foreign power had polluted the water in Hawaii with petroleum, and families, babies, pets were getting sick and sent to the emergency room. Imagine what our response would be. I don't think it would be just to tell everyone that it's okay, we're taking care of it, we care.
Right, absolutely. And also, I mean, it's just terrible to even say this, but it seems that a lot of babies died. I mean, there's a gravesite near the Camp Lejeune base filled with babies.
Yeah, and my mom had 2 babies that had neural tube defects that did not survive. So I had 2 siblings. And then she died of 2 types of acute leukemia in 2013. And that is the most direct correlation between a chemical and a disease that I think is on the books. Benzene causes leukemia. That is a factual statement. It's not, it's not something that we think. It's something that we know.
And can you kind of also talk about just what the Army's response was? Because I've seen it not from a military standpoint, but from a government standpoint in Flint and elsewhere. First, they tell you, don't believe your lying eyes or symptoms. Then they tell you, oh, yeah, there's a little issue, but it's not a big, it's not major. There's no evidence of widespread contamination. And then when they can't cover it up, it's cover your ass, like you said. So my understanding from the brief research I did was the Army tried to escape responsibility and then tried to basically lowball the people who suffered and tried to cover or provide medical care to as few people as possible.
Right. It was the Marine Corps.
Marine Corps.
But, in Red Hill, it is actually a joint base and the Army is affected. So it's the Army, Air Force, Navy. And so, it's certainly not something that's, exclusive to Camp Lejeune as far as the different services, the different branch. It's not exclusive to the Marine Corps. So what they did was they said, well, we can't prove that this disease that you have or this illness you have is from the chemicals because you smoked cigarettes when you were in the Marine Corps. And, oh, you were, you had this other exposure or whatever they could find out of the air to say it could have been something else. Because they know you can't use any of the data and exactly 100% guarantee that my mother's leukemia came from the benzene that she drank in the water. And they know that. So they go, oh, well, if it could have been something else. So there's no benefit of the doubt to the veteran, to the active duty service member, to the family member. They give the benefit of doubt to the chemical.
Right.
And that's where, you know, I know you have seen tons of that in Flint. The chemical lobby, the fossil fuel industry, they are the power. And whether it comes to corporate America or the United States government, which is, as we know, very little difference in those two things anymore. Those lobbies, those industries, they make the rules and they make the money and they keep people rich. And until we are able to overturn the polluter getting the benefit of the doubt as opposed to the victim, this is going to keep happening because they can spend money. They've got endless money. I mean, they really do. So, and when I say they, I'm talking about those industries.
And before we move on specifically to what's going on in Hawaii, you yourself have had issues, autoimmune. You know, it's kind of whack-a-mole. I mean, you can't definitively prove that it was from that, but a lot of the symptoms you have are common for the kind of contaminants that were in that water while you were visiting and living on Camp Lejeune's base.
Yes, and it's very difficult to find anyone who lived at Camp Lejeune for, you know, a longer period of time, meaning more than, you know, a few months, that isn't experiencing these kind of issues. As I said to someone else, it's kind of common sense. If you look at these chemicals and you think of the reaction your immune system would have to them, it's not going to be a good reaction. It's not something that we evolved. Our bodies haven't evolved for, you know, being exposed to 80,000 chemicals that are in use, and certainly not drinking jet fuel. So, you know, it's almost how could it not affect your immune system is the sad. But so my symptoms are very common, and we have I'm on a community assistance panel which works with the CDC to represent the Camp Lejeune community and veterans. And as you said earlier, we have managed to get healthcare and disability service connection for 15 of the illnesses that people that we've been able to link with science and that people are commonly getting. And family members, we're the first civilians to get healthcare through the VA because of this, but they're the payer of last resort. So it's only if everything else runs out.
Right.
Having said that, it was a huge deal, and it's cost the government billions of dollars. So poisoning people isn't low cost either. Right.
And by the way, I mean, people, the victims of Camp Lejeune had to fight for just that.
Oh,
you're talking 20, 30 years just to get that in 2012 under President Obama. The people of Flint, I could tell you, they don't have Medicare for all. They had temporary expanded Medicaid, but they don't have long-term health care paid for by the government for heavy metal poisoning, bacterial contamination, a lot of other carcinogens and other contaminants that were in there. So Camp Lejeune, like modern day victims of environmental injustice and contamination, it's just the people, it's the victims who have to fight for this, and the government dragging their feet. I wanted to move on to what's going on in Hawaii. I'm just completely copying this from the great Abby Martin because I took notes from you were on with her. So they've had this from World War II, the Red Hill fuel storage facility, about 200 million gallons of fuel sitting there under a mountain in rusted tanks right over the aquifer. So right over the drinking water is where they had these fuel tanks. Each of those tanks are about 18 stories high, 13 million gallons of fuel apiece they hold. And again, only 100 feet separates the top of the water table, the drinking water source, and these fuel storage tanks. The Navy's own studies show that this has been leaking fuel into the ground basically since the facility's beginnings.
In Pearl Harbor, it's been leaking into Pearl Harbor.
Into Pearl Harbor.
Yes,
Yeah.
and on Pearl Harbor Day,
Yeah, today is Pearl Harbor Day. That's a great. Today is the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. I should have led with that.
It seems like we'd honor the veterans that lost their lives and the people that were fought in the war. It seems like we'd honor them instead of just having ceremonies that we wouldn't maybe pour fuel into the Pearl Harbor. And
I also want to bring up, because the Navy has basically acknowledged that there's high levels of petroleum, lead, oil that they have found leaking. But they always said, but we have groundwater monitoring. So we have wells that do groundwater monitoring. So although these levels are very high, again, oil, petroleum, diesel fuel, that they're above, quote, the allowable limits, which in my view is a joke, why we even have allowable limits. There should be no diesel fuel in your water anywhere. But they always said our monitoring doesn't show that it's in the drinking water. Well, people in Hawaii, we're finding out now, have been having similar symptoms for decades. So it seems to me, based on the stories I've covered, they could say what they want, maybe, but how do we know that their testing was completely accurate, that they were completely transparent about what was in the water? And you don't know what's in that water until people start smelling it, or there's too much of a leak. There's too much toxins for them to cover. So, question: for all we know, this has been leaking and making people sick for God knows how long.
Right, and importantly, what you're talking about with the levels. That's another trick that they use. And that's what's happening with PFAS. They're able to say in one state the level is this, in another state the level is this. So instead of having the precautionary principle like Europe has, we go state by state to decide what limits of these chemicals are allowed. And actually, when I was talking to Abby, I kind of misspoke about one thing. I said, well, the level of benzene is supposed to be 0. And then I kind of went, I should have double checked that. And I went back, and the allowable limit is 5. It's the goal to have 0. And I was just like you're saying, the goal? No, you should have no benzene in the water, so.
And that's also, I want to stress that, because they say, for example, the allowable limit of lead in drinking water is 15 parts per billion, but that's not actually a public health measurement. That's a corrosion measurement. So a lot of these, like the EPA, whatever they come up with for the allowable level of XYZ, you always got to look underneath the hood, because really every person's different. So maybe if I was exposed to 2% benzene, I don't know, maybe I'd be okay. But another person with immune problems or whatever else, it would destroy their system even with that allowable limit. So it's pretty insane that they even have a measurement for what's an allowable limit of diesel fuel or jet fuel in your water.
Right. And, and it might affect someone who has immune problems, if there's acute poisoning like is happening in Red Hill. But, you can be perfectly healthy, and it's just some genetic thing and some luck of the draw means that is going to get your cell and damage your bone marrow. You can be the healthiest person in the world, and you're just the person that is going to give leukemia to, and that's one of, I think, the most alarming thing. The urgent thing in Hawaii right now is because the Navy let the water get to the point where people are getting acute poisoning, which is terrifying. And by that, having that level, they can taste and smell the fuel, and they're actually posting pictures on the joint base Facebook page of them using a lighter to spark the top of the water. Because that's happening, now the Navy is saying, when people ask at these town halls, mothers, asking, well, can I bathe my child? And they're saying, well, you're your own best censor. Some people are more sensitive than others. So just be your judge. Talk to your doctor. They're using all these things and telling people to use their best judgment about whether to bathe their child in hot bath water, where the vapor, the steam will poison the children. Right. So they let it get to the worst point, and now they're using that worst point to buy themselves time to cover up what they've done and to try and figure out how to keep that fuel in those tanks.
Right.
Because that's the goal.
Right. And by the way, I mean, the other element of this is in Camp Lejeune, it was surrounding people that got made sick, as well as the military on the Marine Corps base. Here, it's also people in the Navy that have been poisoned. It's also, in addition to the surrounding communities around Pearl Harbor. So the United States, in this case, the Navy, in Camp Lejeune's case, the Marine Corps, they've been apparently knowingly poisoning their own service members. In America, we just fetishize the military. It's like, cannot criticize, cannot cut the military budget. Veterans Day, thank you for your service. And, I think for the actual soldiers, I do thank them. But the United States Navy, Marine Corps, and God knows how many, the Army, they've been essentially knowingly allowing leaks and poisoning of active duty and veterans. So what does that really say about this, narrative of, we hold sacred our service members?
It says it's bullshit. It's crap. It's and the thing is that it's not necessary. They can do what they need to do in their, let's just say whatever, whether you agree with their goals or not, and a lot of people don't. But they can meet their goals without poisoning people. They just have to spend more money, and they have to do things that they don't want to do. So it's not only poisoning active duty service members and their families, it's doing it unnecessarily. They've spent billions of dollars on, half a bomb, you know what I mean? And then they say, this is not cost effective when it comes to putting a lab on the island where they're keeping those tanks above the water source. Right. So they had to ship their samples to the mainland, and they were damaged. Guess what? We had a lot of damaged samples in Camp Lejeune too. Right. So it's certainly odd, and you hear there was a wife at one of the town halls, and she was saying, my husband's on a submarine. I can't talk to him, and he's on a submarine under the water. And he thinks that myself and my child are being taken care of by the Navy, and we're not. Right. And they really had no answer for her, and they never have an answer, because a lot of people on active duty have this kind of feeling like that's what they signed up for. We signed up to put ourselves at risk. But people have to realize it's not just active duty, it's their families too. Right. In addition to in Red Hill, the rest of this island who are at great risk. And I think one thing I see changing is I see more and more active duty service people and family members who are not afraid to criticize the leadership, not afraid to say you're doing this, criminally. So that's at least one positive thing, is that people are getting to know the truth, which is the sad truth that they cannot trust the Department of Defense of the United States to keep them safe, which is supposed to be the Department of Defense's #1 job.
Right. And also, for what's going on right now in Hawaii, the military is, offering alternative housing for service members and civilian employees who live near the base. But we don't know if this is just confined to the base directly surrounding the base. I mean, this is a water aquifer that serves all of Pearl Harbor and the surrounding communities. So it seems to be the Navy is making this that it's really exclusively to the base and kind of the direct surrounding areas. But I don't think it's clear if it's only the base, the Navy base, and the direct surrounding areas that have been affected.
It's not clear at all. And that's why the governor and the Department of Health yesterday ordered them to defuel those tanks.
Right.
You just rarely hear a Department of Health at the state level telling the federal government, the United States military, we have a permitting issue,
Yeah.
And so that gives you an idea how serious this is.
Right.
And, the military shut down a well at the same place that the Water Supply Board did. And the Water Supply Board for the civilian community, I mean. And of course, there's just no way of knowing what's going on. There's been so much fuel. They're saying they can't identify the source of contamination yet. We don't have the Water Supply Board isn't getting the lab results directly. They're getting a spreadsheet created by the Navy, and any chemist, toxicologist will tell you they need to see the actual lab reports.
Right.
So, I would tell anyone I cared about on that island not to drink the water, don't boil water, don't run hot water. It's actually more dangerous to breathe in steam than people think it is. It's incredibly dangerous. One of the things that we studied at Camp Lejeune, one of the ways that I think we help by being a community representing, oops, sorry. My computer started an update. One of the things that we helped in saying was, well, what about the people that worked in the kitchens, the mess halls? They were standing over dishes, washing those dishes all the day and breathing in that steam. And quite a few of them, unfortunately, died soon after that. So,
Right.
I hope I'm not being repetitive, but I just think it's urgent that we get the word out to people. Don't take the chance. It's not worth it.
And my last question, because you're a journalist now, you've focused on Camp Lejeune and other areas with water contamination, specifically tied to the military. Well, how many other places have fuel storage tanks 100 feet or very close to the groundwater or the aquifer? I know I've covered in St. Louis. They had radioactive Manhattan Project waste and material stored in residential communities that weren't sealed properly. And there was massive air pollution, groundwater contamination. So, I mean, obviously there's no way to actually know the exact answer, but it's not like Hawaii or Camp Lejeune, North Carolina is the only military bases with fuel storage tanks that are old and rusty and might be leaking and might be contaminating water.
I've written about St. Louis as well, the cancer cluster there of really rare cancers like appendix cancer. That's another tragic story, and that's all going into my book, which I'm writing right now, about how war has kind of completely transformed our environment, and not in a good way. We don't know how many of the military bases have those underground tanks, because again, it's very difficult to get information because it's national security. But we know PFAS is a huge problem. I think it's like, over 130 bases, maybe more. And it's not just that. You have TCE and PCE entering the water supply through degreasers and chemicals that you're used to clean tanks. It takes a toll to keep this kind of military operating.
Right.
So there's a lot we don't know, and the only way it's going to change is if we as a country say, you are not a separate thing from the United States. You're our military. You're our military, and I am an American, and I should have a say in how you conduct yourself. And so the way to do that is to be in touch with your Congress people when you have something that you feel strongly about, like, hey, we need to shut those tanks down in Red Hill forever. We need to put pressure on Congress, because those are the people that will then be able to say to the Navy, we'll defund you if you don't. And that's really, that's the way to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time. Is there anywhere people could find your work?
You can find, I post most everything on Twitter, all my work I do. And I've also been doing a lot with Red Hill on Twitter, because, it's just a good way to find people who are on the ground and to try and exchange information and that kind of thing. And I'm at LOU Freshwater, Lou Freshwater.
Absolutely. And I really encourage, I know people are busy, but if you got 20 minutes, look up what happened at Camp Lejeune. People should not forget. This was a Marine Corps base that basically had contaminated water. You're talking from the 1950s through the late 80s, I believe.
Yeah, early 80s, mid 80s.
Yeah.
And those are numbers that they put on it. But the thing is, there's still underground plumes of these contaminants there today that they're having to deal with and remediate. So, and people are still getting sick. It's not a closed chapter either.
Absolutely. Let's definitely keep in touch, because unfortunately this is not the last story we're going to be covering of water
and thank
contamination.
you so much for covering it and everything you do. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All the help we can get, don't we?
So that was Lori Lou Freshwater. She is a survivor of the Camp Lejeune water contamination in North Carolina. There has been God knows how many babies that died from that, birth defects, leukemia in children, adults with autoimmune issues, including her. So I'm really happy she was able to come on with us and talk about the urgent, acute water poisoning in Hawaii. So we will try and cover and stay on the water contamination in Hawaii as much as we can. Abby Martin is also doing some great reporting on that. I know she had a video on it earlier today on the Empire Files channel. So we'll try to stay on that, and we'll post shorter clips from my interview with Lori on the channel. I want to read some super chats. Above all things, love. $5. Water protectors are the heroes of our time. Thank you. Orca, California, $5. Great job, Jordan. Keep it up. Appreciate it. Kelly Elaine, $100. Kelly, thank you so much. Kelly, that's really generous. Thank you. Thanks for staying on the water atrocities, Jordan. As long as I got energy and air in my lungs and oxygen in my body, I will stay on it. And welcome new Status Coup YouTube member, Keiichi Ra. Thank you. Appreciate it. And for those that are not yet signed up, consider signing up as a Status Coup member. You could sign up as a Status Coup member for as low as $5 a month. Membership is how we cover all of the on-the-ground stories that we cover. Right now, Colin and I are both doing a lot of things behind the scenes. Hold on. This thing again is screwed up. Right now, we're doing a lot of things behind the scenes, a lot of logistical things that I don't want to bore you with, but they're very time-consuming. Also, I'm looking for help for Status Coup. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. So I don't know when I'll be on the ground next, but we definitely want to grow our membership to fund more on-the-ground reporting. As you know, this year we've been, like every year, we have gone all across the country covering important stories that the corporate media is certainly not covering, and frankly, independent media is not covering that much either. So if you can, definitely support us. StatusCoup.com/join. And Colin just wrote, we'll be looking into gift memberships for the holidays. So stay tuned. That's right. So you could also buy a membership for family or friends. And membership is how we grow. There's a digital diarrhea out there right now with a gazillion new channels on YouTube and Twitch and everywhere. And frankly, a lot of them are all covering the same exact crap. Very few of them are actually leaving the studio and going out on the ground and covering important stories like we are. So I hope you'll consider signing up. StatusCoup.com/join. StatusCoup.com/join. We will cut clips from my interview with Lori Liu, as well as Brett, the Amazon worker, who is part of the union drive, who was arrested. So thank you for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.